Listen, that low, rhythmic thrumming isn't the heartbeat of the earth. It is the sound of my mill. My name is Robin, and while others pray to saints for their daily bread, I am the one who grinds it out of the stubborn earth. The year is 1348. The sun hasn't even thought about rising over the hills of Yorkshire, but my world is already in motion. To be a miller is to be a master of the elements. I don't work with fire like the blacksmith, or with dough like the baker. I work with the invisible, the weight of the river, and the teeth of the wind. People call me Dusty Poll because the flour never leaves my hair. But they also call me much worse things when they think I'm not listening. Before I touch a single grain of wheat, I must talk to the river. I step out onto the wooden gangway, the mist from the mill race chilling my skin. The water is high today, heavy and grey. In the Middle Ages, the mill is the most complex machine a man will ever see. I check the lade, the wooden channel that brings the water to my wheel. If a branch gets stuck there, it can shatter a paddle, and a broken wheel means a hungry village. I grease the great axle with pig fat. The smell is foul, but it's the only thing that keeps the wood from screaming under the pressure of tons of rushing water. This wheel has turned since the days of my grandfather, and if God wills it, it will turn long after the great sickness they whisper about finally reaches our valley. By dawn, the first carts arrive. You see, in 1348, a peasant doesn't choose his miller. He is bound to me by soak rights. My mill belongs to the lord of the manor, and every tenant is legally forced to bring their grain here. If they try to grind it at home with a hand quern, the lord's men will break their stones and fine them in the manorial court. This is why they hate me. They think I take too much multure, the portion of grain I keep as payment. The law says I can take 1/16, but the villagers swear my gold thumb always finds a way to take more. They watch me like hawks as I pour their grain into the hopper. They don't see the cost of the stones, the repairs to the dam, or the tax I must pay to the Lord. They only see the flour I keep for myself. The sun is up, and the roar inside the mill is deafening. Let's talk about the stones. These aren't just rocks. They are the French burrs, brought all the way from the continent. They are hard as diamonds and cost more than a small farm. I spend hours dressing the stones. I use a sharp steel pick to carve fine grooves into the surface. We call it feathering. If the stones are too smooth, they won't grind. They'll just burn the flour. The scent of hot stone and pulverized wheat is everywhere. I must keep the stones at the perfect distance. Too close and they spark, which can ignite the flour dust and blow the whole mill to heaven. Too far and the flour is coarse and fit only for pigs. It is a balance of millimeters in a world of ton-heavy timber. My workday is a constant battle with gravity. I shoulder sacks that weigh 100 weight, hauling them up the narrow stairs to the top floor. My back is a map of knots and old injuries. And the dust, the white dust, is everywhere. It gets into your eyes, your throat, and your soul. There are dangers here that the baker never knows. The great shaft turns with enough force to crush a horse. If my tunic gets caught in the wooden gears, I am a dead man before I can scream. We millers have a saying, "The mill drinks water, but it eats men." I've seen a man lose 3 fingers just trying to clear a clog in the spout. You learn to respect the machine, or it humbles you forever. In the afternoon, while the grain flows, the mill becomes a gathering place. Since everyone is forced to come here, the mill is the village's news herald. Men sit on the sacks, waiting for their turn, and they talk. They talk about the war in France, about the price of wool, and they tell millers' tales, usually jokes at my expense. I ignore them and whistle. We millers are known for whistling. It's the only way to check if your lungs are still clear of the dust. Sometimes a traveling friar stops by, trading a blessing for a handful of oats. I take the blessing, but I check his coins twice. In 1348, charity is fine, but business is business. An honest miller has a golden thumb. That's what they say. It's a double-edged compliment. It means my thumb is so used to testing the quality of the flour that it's become gold to me. I press the flour between my fingers. If it feels like silk, it's perfect. If it feels like sand, the stones need dressing. But the villagers think it means I use my thumb to tip the scales. They tell stories of millers who have secret trapdoors in their hoppers to steal a little grain from every bag. Do I? Well, a man has to live. The Lord takes his cut, the church takes its tithe, and the river takes its toll. If a few handfuls stay in my bin, who is to say it wasn't the mill ghost who took them? The shadows are long now, stretching across the mill pond. I start to shut down the sluice gate. The roar fades to a rumble, then a groan, and finally, just the sound of dripping water. Mills are lonely places at night. The villagers won't come near here after dark. They say the ghosts of drowned men haunt the wheel, or that the clacker, the wooden arm that shakes the hopper, keeps moving even when the water is off. I don't fear ghosts. I fear the silence. In the silence, you start to think about the stories from the south. They say the great mortality has reached London. They say the graveyards are full. I look at my millstones, silent and grey in the twilight, and I wonder if I will be grinding grain for a village of ghosts by next harvest. I lock the heavy oak door. My skin is white, my lungs are heavy, and my bones ache with a cold that no fire can reach. But tomorrow, the river will still be flowing, and the people will still be hungry. I am Robin the Miller. I am the man between the field and the bread. I am hated, I am needed, and I am still here. Thank you for listening to The Stones today. If you felt the power of the water and the dust of 1348, subscribe to Medieval Workday. Next time, we shall visit the physician and see how he battles the darkness that is coming for us all. Many think a mill is just a house by the water, but to me, it is a living, breathing beast. Hidden inside this tower is a skeleton of gargantuan oak beams. The main shaft is so heavy it took the strength of 10 oxen and the entire village to lift it into place. Every gear is a masterpiece of carpentry. I use different woods for different tasks. I carve the teeth of the wheels from hornbeam. It is hard as bone and does not chip under the violent pressure. If even one tooth fails, the whole machine will convulse, and stone millstones weighing a ton could break free, smashing through the floors to the very cellar. In 1348, we do not know the formulas for friction, but we know the voice of the wood. I listen to the vibration of the floor with my bare feet. If the hum becomes too high-pitched, the shaft is overheating. If a rhythmic knocking appears, a stone or a piece of iron has fallen into the hopper, which could strike a spark and turn the flour dust in the air into a ball of fire. Water is my best friend and my bitterest enemy. In the spring, when the snow melts in the highlands, the river turns into a roaring monster. I spend nights on the dam with a long hook in my hands, fighting off ice floes and logs that could shatter my wheel. One wrong step, and the icy water drags you under the blades, where there is no hope. In winter, a different misery arrives. Ice. If the wheel freezes, it can be crushed by the weight of a frozen mass. I have to go out in the frost and hack the ice away with an axe, risking my fingers. When the mill stops, a quiet panic sets in the village. People have grain in their barns, but they cannot eat it. You cannot chew dry wheat. It will break your teeth. On such days, I feel like the king of this valley. My endurance and my struggle with the ice determine whether the babies in their cradles will have porridge or if they will suck on an empty crust. Let us speak of the price of this work. Do you see the white dust dancing so beautifully in the sunbeams? To me, it is a slow poison. Millers rarely live to see gray hair. Our lungs become clogged with flour that turns into a sticky dough inside us. We call it the white breathlessness. By 40, a miller coughs so loudly it can be heard on the other side of the pond. And then there is the noise. The roar of the millstones is so loud that over time you stop hearing the whisper of your wife or the singing of birds. We communicate with signs. I see the peasant's lips moving, and I understand by his eyes that he is accusing me of short waiting again. Мои уши постоянно звенят, даже ночью. This is the price we pay for turning the gold of the fields into the silver of flour. In 1348, even air and water are not free. My lord believes the river belongs to him. I pay a massive tax for the right to obstruct the water's path. If a peasant decides to build a small wheel on a stream in the woods, it is a crime. I go with the Lord's men myself to hunt for these black mills. We smash their millstones to pieces. Is it cruel? Perhaps. But I pay for my license, and I will not tolerate competitors. The peasants whisper that I am the Lord's hound. They hate me for forcing them into multure, the mandatory grinding. But without this order, there would be chaos. Who would repair the bridges? Who would keep the river clean? The mill is the center of the economy, and this center must have one master. I have a son, little Will. He already knows how to tell wheat from spelt by touch, but do I want him to be a miller? I look at my hands. They are covered in scars from the stone and burns from the friction of the ropes. My joints are swollen from constant dampness. The milling business is often hereditary because no one else knows the secrets of adjusting the chutes. Но это одинокая жизнь. Our daughters are reluctantly taken as wives. They say millers have flour in their blood, and they are as slippery as an eel in a pond. We live on the outskirts, between the village and the forest, always a bit of an outsider. We are the ones who know the price of every grain, and the ones who see how quickly the granaries empty in a bad harvest year. Now, as the sun has almost set, I look at the road. More and more people in rags are walking along it. They do not carry grain. They carry only fear. They tell of cities where bells ring for the dead, with no one left to bury them. In 1348, death is the only guest who does not have to pay multure. If this plague comes here, who will bring the grain? What use are my great stones if there is no one left to bake bread? I stop the wheel. The creak of the wood in the twilight sounds like a moan. I enter the house, which smells of oatmeal and old leather. My wife looks at me, and in her eyes, I see the same question. How much longer do we have to turn this wheel of fate? I lie on the bed, but the shaft is still spinning in my head. Thump, thump. It is the rhythm of my life. Tomorrow dawn will come, and I will open the sluice again. As long as the water flows, life flows. I am Robin, the miller of the valley. I am a thief in the eyes of men, and a saint in the eyes of the hungry. And as long as my stones sing, the world will be fed. A mill is never truly silent, even when the wheel stops. The wood remembers the vibration. I have learned to speak a language that no one else in the village understands. I can tell by the clack of the shoe, the wooden tray that feeds the grain, exactly how dry the summer was. If the grain is brittle and shatters into a fine, sharp dust, it tells me of a drought that baked the earth until it cracked like an old bone. If the grain is soft and stubborn, it speaks of a rain-soaked harvest where the stalks rotted in the fields. I am the archivist of the village's climate. When the baker complains that his bread isn't rising, I am the one who knows it's because the sun didn't shine enough in July. In 1348, we don't have almanacs or weather glass. We have the memory of the stones. I see the history of the year in every handful of meal that falls into the bin. Every part of this mill has a name, and every name has a story. We talk about the damsel, the iron spindle that shakes the grain. They call it that because of its constant rhythmic chatter, like a gossiping girl in the market. But to me, the damsel is the heartbeat. If that heartbeat skips, the stones run dry. And there is nothing more dangerous than a dry stone. When the grain runs out, the stones begin to rub against each other, stone on stone. It creates a sound like a soul screaming in purgatory. The heat becomes intense, and the smell, it smells like the end of the world. It's the smell of burning flint. Many millers have lost their lives when a spark from a dry stone ignited the flour-thick air, blowing the roof clean off the tower. I live in constant fear of that scream. I am a man who must always keep the beast fed, or it will consume itself, and me with it. My father used to tell me about the Great Famine that happened 30 years ago, before I was born. He said the rain didn't stop for 3 years. The grain turned black in the ears, and the mills stood silent because the water was too violent to harness. He told me stories that I try to forget while I work, stories of people eating the thatch from their roofs, and darker things that we don't speak of in the light of day. That memory lives in the stones. Every time I see a peasant crying because I took my multure, I remember my father's face when he spoke of the hunger. It is why I am so strict with my scales. It is why I hoard a little extra in the good years. In 1348, a full stomach is the only thing that separates a man from a beast. We are only 3 bad harvests away from the wild, and as the miller, I am the guardian of that thin line. Because I live by the water, my life is different from the villagers. I have my own eel traps set in the mill race. While the peasants eat their pottage, I have fresh fish and eels as thick as a man's arm. It is another reason they envy me. I grow herbs in the damp soil behind the wheelhouse: mint, comfrey, and wild garlic. The scent of the herbs mingles with the smell of the wet wood and the flour. It is my own private world. I watch the herons fishing in the pond, and I realize that the mill is part of the forest now. We are a bridge between the civilized world of the village and the raw power of the river. But this privilege comes at a price. The dampness lives in my bones. Every morning, I wake up and my fingers won't close until I've held them over the fire for an hour. My skin is always pale, never touched by the sun of the open fields. I am a creature of the shade and the spray. The bells are ringing for Compline now, the final prayer of the day. The sound carries over the water, mournful and low. I look at my hands, white with the dust of 1,000 lives. How many more people will I feed before the year is out? The travelers say the great mortality is moving faster than a horse can gallop. They say it follows the trade routes, hiding in the sacks of grain and the folds of fine cloth. I look at the sacks piled in my loft and feel a cold shiver that has nothing to do with the river mist rushing outside, endless, indifferent, and rushing outside, endless, indifferent, and powerful. I am Robin. I am the man of the wheel, and tonight I pray that the stones will still have grain to grind when the sun rises on a world that might never be the same again.